It's always nice to see things that unite people, things that bring people together. But one that frustrates me is, and especially comes obvious on July 4th, I guess I'd say I'm patriotic, but to an extent, right? So a lot of times on July 4th, I'll go down to a Sox game and watch the fireworks afterward, and people will be chanting, USA, USA. And for some reason, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I should be feeling, yeah, USA. But I just don't feel it, because I see all these people from all these different cultures and nations, and I'm thinking, wow, we are pretty pompous. And then I remember back to, say, the second Gulf War, or the first Gulf War, and the video feed of us just pummeling and pounding and blasting Baghdad back into the Stone Age. First time we really used Patriot missiles and cruise missiles and all of this new technology, new ways to blow people up. And I remember back then, I know I was cheering. I know I was thinking that I even wanted to go into the military and help them out. But over time, my thinking changed, and I thought, wow, what a way to live. It's not just about USA, USA, it's about humankind, humankind. But when there's something that's really genuinely good, that really brings people together for a good purpose, it's exciting. I can remember something like that. I was fairly young, but I remember hearing on the news as all of America gathered around their TVs as CNN was just growing up and the 24-hour news cycle was becoming the big thing. I remember hearing that this little 1.5-year-old girl had been playing hide and seek in her aunt's yard with her brother, and she found a great hiding spot. There was this pipe in the ground and the flower pot on top of it, and she took the flower pot off, and remember baby Jessica? She crawled down with the pipe to hide. The problem was the pipe was really, really long, and it was only 8 inches wide, and so she slipped and slided down 22 feet into this pipe where she became lodged. And so I can remember people, kind of the way they watched OJ, right, driving along in his Bronco. They all gathered around their TVs, gasping and wondering what was going to happen to this little girl who was inside of this pipe for 58 hours, wondering if she was going to survive. All of a sudden, all of the things that divide us, the politics and the ideologies and the religions and everything seem to just fade away. All of us, at that point, were brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers of baby Jessica. And everybody was watching and waiting as they drilled this hole, first time using water jet technology as they're cutting down, I believe it was a 30-foot well that they cut, and then they went over, so because the paramedics obviously couldn't fit down an 8-inch tube, grabbed her and brought her up. And I can still remember that moment as that paramedic comes up holding the rope, because they hoisted him up, and the other hand is holding this little baby with her arms like this, because she'd been stuck in there and her muscles had kind of frozen up in that position. And they talked about how, as they were up top trying to encourage her, as she's calling out for her mommy, she was singing lullabies, nursery rhymes to herself, to the best of her ability for an 18-month-old. But it was just an amazing thing that brought all of America, and really the world, because people across the world were seeing this, and were cheering for baby Jessica in a way that really moved our hearts, and made us forget how different we are, and made us only focus on how like we are. Jesus is trying to do this. This is, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. You see, when the lectionary gives us a short blurb, we don't really know what the background is, what the context is. So here Jesus is with all of the disciples and all of these people coming, and they're saying he's out of his mind because he's healing people, which just doesn't make sense, but okay. And the family comes along, and he says, psh, family? Who's my family? Who's my mother? Who's my brother? Who's my sisters? Right? But the background context is Jesus calls the 12 disciples. This is where he calls the disciples. And just before this, he's at the synagogue. And there's these people with physical ailments all gathered around, come to see this man, Jesus. And the Pharisees are standing there watching him because it's a Sabbath. And they're just waiting for him to slip up, to heal on the Sabbath. You don't do anything on the Sabbath. And they're just standing there watching him. Keep an eye on this one. I know he's going to do something. Jesus is over and he knows they're watching him. He knows that they're just waiting for him to trip up. And so he looks out and he sees this man with a withered hand. And he says, brother, come here. And just before he heals him, he turns and he looks at the Pharisees. Is it better that I should do good and help people on the Sabbath? Or should I sit idle and do nothing for somebody in need? As you might imagine, they didn't have really any reply to that. But they stuck with their guns because it doesn't matter. It's the Sabbath. You got to follow the rules. That's what makes us different, Jesus. We're the good ones. We follow the rules. You rebel, you just always like to go and stir up trouble. And then you go and make excuses and say, oh, I'm doing good for people. It's okay. Someday you're going to have to learn, Jesus, if you're going to consider yourself one of us. And that was the stand of the Pharisees. Always, always, always. We're looking for somebody to step outside the law so that they could call them out. And in calling them out, show how great the Pharisees were. Right? We always look better if we can find somebody else who looks worse. Point the finger at them. Tying up the strong man. Jesus says, a demon can't be casting out demons. If it's a demon, that just doesn't make any sense. A house can't stand if it's divided against itself. And if you're going to come in the house, and you're going to plunder, and you're going to steal, you're going to have to tie up the dude who's guarding the house. And once you do that, then you can come in and have your way. But until then, the house is under watch. The house is being defended. Jesus tells them, you are tying yourselves. You are tying your own hands because you are so focused on following all of these rules that half of them you made up yourselves, that you are making yourselves an impotent institution. You are taking your ability, your own chances of doing good, you're taking them away because you are so focused on doing what is right. This message is so timeless. Look at the church today. And you may feel that I'm just keep beating the same drum, and I am. Because look at 550,000 congregations in the U.S., all waiting for one another to do something wrong. They're going to have a wedding and they're going to marry some gay people. Wait, you just watch. We're going to go burn flags and picket at a military funeral because of their bad ways. We know God is going to punish them. Oh, they don't believe the same way that we do about Jesus. Oh, just wait. There is a place in the seventh circle of hell reserved for you. Because we are so focused on being right. We are so focused on following rules that God didn't put there in the first place. We have tied up our hands. The church, universal, that has so much power, so much potential to do good, to change the world for the better. And instead, we sit in our own little factions, doing nothing, just staring across the aisle, staring across the trenches at one another, just waiting for somebody to slip up. And this is where Jesus teaches us, from his own experience with those Pharisees, that we have amazing potential, but by God, we have to use it. We have to use it, or else all of our good ideas will never be anything more than that. Merely good ideas that never see the light of day. This is what Jesus is trying to tell us. But then, as he's ridiculing them about their laws and their rules and their judgments, he says, everybody will be forgiven unless you blaspheme against the Holy Spirit, because that is unforgivable. Okay. I guess Jesus has the right to say things like this, but when you think about it, he's almost being hypocritical at the face of things, right? He's just got done teaching them not to do this, and here he turns around and says, anything is okay except for this one thing. Except for this one thing. If you blaspheme against the Holy Spirit, you're in big trouble. You can't be forgiven. The man who goes around telling everybody that they are forgiven in the name of God for anything that they've done turns around and says, except for this one thing. Sorry, it's unforgivable. If we choose to read it that way. Because in Greek, the word for forgiveness and the word for reconciliation are the same word. So what if Jesus is saying, everything and everyone is reconcilable unless you speak out against the spirit that resides in those human beings, then how can you have reconciliation? It will never happen. If the image of God that is inside of everybody, if you're saying, my image is better than your image, and you have that mindset, you will never, ever, ever be reconciled, because you will always see others as other. How then can you have a relationship? How then can you have community? How then can you have the form of reconciliation that brings people together to do good things, to do things that are right, to help other people? That is the question that Jesus poses to the Pharisees, that they are completely and utterly helpless to answer, because they are content where they're at. They're content being the readers of the law. They're content to being the writers of the law, and saying that everything that they do is done in the name of God, and therefore it's okay. Even though Jesus tells them, you don't make the rules, guys. You don't make the rules. The Creator who makes the rules has not written the law. You may have heard this from Paul. Is not written on stone. It's written in the human heart. And what gives you the right to say that you are any better at reading that law that has been placed in your soul by God Himself than anybody else? But then, just as we think we have Jesus figured out, He does it again. Jesus, your mom and your brothers are here. They want to talk to you. They think you've gone out of your mind. They think you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You're ready for the Rubber Room Hotel. Mother? Brother? Look around. Those who do the will of God are my mothers and brothers. To heck with them. Once again, here we go, us good Christians following the Bible and reading it and interpreting it, hearing that, we're my mothers and brothers, I have nothing to do with them. He didn't say that, did he? We like to hear it that way. We hear a lot of things that Jesus says, and we take them in and we think, oh gosh, why was he so harsh? Kind of like when he told that woman, right, they'd come into the table and say, you know, we don't feed the dogs the table scraps. And she says, even the dogs catch what falls off the table. We hear Jesus saying one thing when He's really saying another. He's not saying, these are not my mother and my brothers. He's saying, all of you, just like the people who were gathered around that well, waiting for baby Jessica to come out okay. These are my mother, brothers, my sisters, because we together are doing the will of God who has sent us to save the world through our actions, through our love, with our very hands that also were formed in the image of God. And when we do that, it's not only that we bless other people, it's not only that other people come out of it being better off than when they started, but we too are blessed. We too come out of it being so much better. Charlie Musselwhite, blues musician, harmonica player, he was driving to the studio on that morning in 1987, sitting there thinking about his drinking problem that he had because, see, every morning, get up about 8 o'clock in the morning and the bottle was right there next to the bed just waiting for him. And he'd go right back to it. But he was bothered by it. He was bothered by his lack of self-control, so he said, okay, I'm not going to drink before noon. So finally he gets up to the point where he wouldn't take a drink before noon. Boy, bing! When noon hit, he was on that bottle like a red hot Cheeto. Then he tried to push it back. But the one thing that he really struggled with was, despite the fact that he'd done so many shows and he was so good at performing, he was still a nervous wreck to be up on stage in front of people. And he said, I need the bottle in order to do what I do. And as he's driving to the studio that morning, and he's got the radio on, and he's barely functioning because he's already been in the bottle before he got in the car. And he hears what's happening in Texas with this little girl in a well. And he says, my God, here I am, worried and fretting and making these excuses because I'm scared to do what I've done every day for God knows how many years right now. And I keep saying that I have to turn back to this crutch. And here she is, 22 feet down in a well, singing nursery rhymes. I'm not scared. What the heck am I so scared of? He says to himself, I am not going to take a drink until they get that girl out of that well. It took 3 days. It took 3 days. But for him, she never came out of the well because he never took another drink again. Because he said, how could I do something that is so damaging to myself when an entire country has come to a well to cheer on this little girl? The same well that we go to for sustenance. The same well that we go to drink from to fill our spirits, to be renewed, to be made whole once again. And so he was able to keep the habit. And he even wrote a song about it called The Well. Look it up sometime on YouTube. It's a good song. Well, what does this all matter if we just sit and talk about it? Nothing. Like the old cereal commercial. Nothing, honey. Doesn't mean a darn thing if we don't do something. And that's why, probably end of this month, beginning of next month, instead of doing church like this, we're going to watch an inspirational movie. And then we're going to get into teams downstairs. And there's going to be choices, right? Whether you want to do like a community garden, or you want to do the bike racks, or the peace garden out here in front of the church, right? We'll have about 5 choices and 5 teams. And if nobody goes into that team, okay. That's an idea whose time has not yet come. And we'll put it aside and we'll focus on the other ones. And we'll start doing it. And we won't point at those other churches that don't do what we feel that God or Jesus calls us to do. We won't call to those who will call themselves a Christian and then sit across the aisle from a Muslim woman on an airplane and tell her to F off because she's a terrorist. We won't tell people who tell gay folks that they're going to hell, that they themselves are going to hell. Nope. We'll talk with our feet and our hands and our works of love, and we'll build an example. We'll dig well, and we'll wait for them to come, because sometime we all need to drink.